We are in a world of opportunity to create experiences that delight customers more than ever before, to make split-second business decisions smarter, to deliver impact faster. At Microsoft Azure, we believe in the power of technology to drive limitless innovation and make your vision possible with a technology partner who has the experience and expertise you can trust.
Hi there, my name is Mark Fitch. I'm team lead for mapping here at Grey Matter. Welcome to our webinar today, Azure Maps for Developers. Mapping expert Clements will walk you through all the resources that are available to help you start building Azure Maps. Enjoy the webinar.
Hello and welcome to the session about Azure Maps for Developers. My name is Clemens Schotte. I'm the Program Manager for Azure Maps. Let's go to my desktop. So this session is meant for developers that want to understand how to get started with Azure Maps. When you get started with Azure Maps, the first thing what you need is, of course, is an Azure subscription. You can sign up for a free Azure subscription at azure.com. When you have an Azure subscription, you go to the Azure portal where you can create a resource group. And within the resource group, you can create an Azure Maps account or resource. When you have an Azure Maps account, you have basically all the benefits and services and APIs available that you can use in your applications. So how do you consume actually Azure Maps? We have actually three types of options. The first option, when you have a website or a mobile application, is to use the Azure Maps Web Control. The Azure Maps Web Control is a JavaScript-based library that can be embedded in your website and or in your mobile application. The second option is actually to use one of the backend APIs from Azure Maps. For example, if you want to do some geocoding, transforming an address to a location, then you can use the REST SDKs for .NET, Java, Python and TypeScript, or you can hardcore program it yourself if you want to do that. And the third option is actually use a third-party map control, for example, Leaflet, and it can also be connected to Azure Maps. So there are three options to consume and use Azure Maps in your applications. So let's go to my desktop and actually, let's try to create a new resource. So here what you see is actually I'm already having an Azure Maps account. I'm already logged into the Azure portal. And in the Azure portal, we're going to create a new Azure Maps account. So create a new resource. We're going to search for Azure Maps. And then we basically hit create. But before we going to create the resource, we need to specify some information. One of the things is the resource group where the Azure Maps accounts needs to be created. I'm going to create a new one. Let's call that just demo. Then we give the Azure Maps account also a name. The name is only meant for you as to understand what you're going to create. Maybe you're creating multiple Azure Maps accounts, one for production and one for development purposes. Let's call that also demo. And then we need to specify a region where the Azure Maps account is created. But that's not completely true because Azure Maps is a global Azure services. So that means that it is available worldwide, except for China and South Korea, by the way. But the region selection is only meant for our billing engine. So when you're using Azure Maps, it's a global services available worldwide. The billing information is stored in that specific region, and also the endpoint of that region is used to be compliant with GDPR, for example. So I can select, for example, Western Europe. Then all my data, what I actually send to Azure Maps, will be processed and stored only in the European Union. But Azure Maps itself will not store data. You do basically use other services in Azure to store data or geospatial data, for example, in Cosmos DB or SQL Azure, whatever you want to use for that. Then I accept the terms and actually I can create the resource. So that will take a couple of seconds before the resource is available. when the resource is available, actually, then we can use that in our applications. And of course, how do we use Azure Maps? That has, of course, to do with authentication. So basically, the first thing what you need is actually an Azure Maps key. And with the Azure Maps key, you can use that in your source code to access the APIs and services from Azure Maps. So let's go back to the slides. Here I have an example about a website, and actually the first thing what you're going to see is actually our Azure Maps web control that can be embedded by using our CDN endpoint. So the atlas.microsoft.com is our CDN endpoint for Azure Maps, and we basically going to embed the version 3 of our web control in this sample. And then we have a small piece of code basically that is going to create a map control. And that map control is actually having a center point and a zoom level. And we need to specify our subscription key or Azure Maps account key. And I will show you later on how to do that. When you have created an Azure Maps control, then actually the second step is waiting for an event that the map is ready. So when the map is ready, then you can basically add your data and do anything what you want to do with the map. So actually I want to show you that in real life, and let's jump actually to Visual Studio Code. Visual Studio Code, one too far, this one. So I already have actually an example of a really simple HTML website. Of course, I have my doc type, I have my head, my body, and basically that's it. The only thing where the map will be created is actually a div. I have given the div an ID. But then, of course, you don't see the map, of course, because you need to load the Azure Maps map control first. So here we have actually the endpoint to our CDN endpoint for Azure Maps. We have some JavaScript code to actually create the map control itself, and it's using the same ID that was in the div where you're placing actually the map to the end user. And I of course need to specify my subscription key. I will show you later on how to get that one. Then when the map is ready, we can actually create a data source, and we basically add that data source to our map control. And then we can add data to the data source, and then basically that it will be visible on the map. But when you add data to the data source, you also need to specify how that data needs to be rendered, actually, how the look and feel of the data is actually on top of the map. So we're going to add additional layers to the map. So we have actually 2 additional layers on top of this demo app. One will be a line layer, and the second one is a symbol layer. We specify some parameters, how that layer needs to behave and what type of data it needs to consume. It's of course using the same data source that we already added to the map. And we can also specify the placement, the order, how the layers are rendered on top of the map. Should it be rendered below the labels, on top of the layers? Which layers are more important than other layers? So you have all the control and flexibility to specify how your data is rendered on top of the map. So in the symbol layer, we basically specify that we are going to use an icon image, and we basically use a kind of filter on top of that to make it possible that we are only seeing the data where we are interested in. So the data source can potentially have more data in it and probably that data will not be all visible to the end user. So you can create a filter for only showing the data what is important for you. So in this sample, we actually are going to use a map where we do a routing from point A to point B. So we added a starting position and an end position. And then of course we need to calculate the route, and we can use one of the backend APIs from Azure Maps for a routing API. And actually I specified it here on the top already. So I have here an API pointing to or routing directions API. So let's go to the documentation actually and look up what it is doing. So I have here already the documentation. Then we can go to references and or REST API. And then we go to search for the routing. So get route directions. And there basically you see already that we have all the parameters here available in the API. And here of course all the descriptions, what it is doing, what kind of parameters are required and which are optional. Of course, there's a lot of things what you can read here and specify. And let's go back to the demo actually. So actually what I have done here is only using some of the parameters that I'm interested in. For example, I want to use it for car routing. I want to have a polygon line. And of course the query, that's basically the longitude and latitude information that will be specified for the starting and end position. But then I need to call this API. So we have actually a helper function that basically can help calling REST APIs directly. So let's go back to the bottom, because there we do the routing of the whole demo. So we basically replace the query with the starting position and the end position. And then basically we use the process request helper function. That was basically what we included in the top of the page. And then we basically can add that result from the API back to our data source. And when we add that data to the data source, it will automatically update the map and it will be visible. So let's see how that looks like. So I already have here the HTML file on my desktop. I just double click it and it will open. And then it's not working. And of course I forgot something, and that was really important, is that we have a subscription key. Let's go to the resource. So I created the Azure Maps resource, and one of the things what we need is the Azure Maps account. And so here we have the key. We can basically copy the key and put that back in the place for the subscription key here. Let's save it and then go back to the demo. We just refresh it, and then we see the map, we see the route, we see the starting point, and we see the end point. The map can be moved, you can zoom in, zoom out, all the basic stuff what you expect from a map, of course. When you zoom in really closely, you even see all the building information and all kind of other details, including traffic lights, for example. So really powerful, I will say. So to get started with Azure Maps, I will say create an Azure Maps account, get your subscription key, and actually use some simple HTML and JavaScript code to get started. But maybe you want to get started and don't want to read all the documentation. Actually, we have you covered in that sense. We have created a sample website. So on the sample website, we have about 280 different samples, including the source codes. So when you go to browse and search for specific scenarios, and maybe you say, maybe this cluster bubble layer demo is exactly what I need, then you can of course try it out yourself first, but you can also directly go to the source code. And basically when you have the source code, it's just copy and paste this, use your own key, and you can actually start running it in your solution. So what do we have available for you as a developer to get started? So we have an Azure Maps Web Control, and you can use the Azure Maps Web Control in two ways. You can use the CDN endpoint. So that is an easy way to get started. We automatically will update or CDN endpoint with always the latest version of our map control. So you don't need to update the Azure Maps control if you stay in the major version. So we are currently in version 3 of the Azure Maps control. Or you can use the NPN packages if you want to use a more controlled way of embedding the Azure Maps web control in your solution. If you don't need a map but just want to use the REST SDKs directly, you can use one of our REST SDKs, what we have available for Java, .NET, Python and TypeScript. And of course, what I already showed you, we have the Azure Maps sample website that can be used as a starter template to get you really quick up and running. Let's go back actually to my desktop because I want to show you the NPN packages. So if you go to the Azure Maps NPN packages, we have multiple NPN packages available. The Azure Maps control is the most useful one, of course. Here you find the information how to get to install the NPN packages in your solution, where we also explain here how to use that with the CDN endpoint. If you want to use the .NET libraries for the backend APIs, you can also go actually to this one, for example. So here we have the REST client library for .NET. What you can install. They are currently in pre-release, but we will release them, of course, really shortly so that they are available also not in a pre-release version. And here is also some example code what you can use, how you basically going to use the library. Here you also need to specify your subscription key, etc. And we give you examples to get started from a .NET side of view. Now, subscription key, I mentioned it multiple times. That is also the same thing what you maybe are very using for Bing Maps for Enterprise. That is basically the Bing Maps version of our enterprise suite of mapping products, what we now unify with Azure Maps. So in the future, we have only Azure Maps available for our enterprise developers. But an Azure Maps key may be not really safe if you are thinking about it, because if you embed that in your HTML and JavaScript code, it will be publicly visible. It's really nice for proof of concept or getting a developer really quick getting started, but you don't want to do that in production. So what kind of alternatives do we have for an Azure Maps key? Luckily, because we are part of Azure, we have all kinds of additional security and authentication mechanisms what we can use for also Azure Maps. Here we have actually an architecture picture showing you how to use managed identities and Azure Maps tokens that are short-lived tokens that can be used in your Azure Maps web control. It does not make sense to steal the Azure Maps tokens because they are short-lived, and of course they have limited access to the Azure Maps resource. So in this example, the Azure Maps token has only access as a data reader. When you're using the normal Azure Maps key, what I showed you before, then you have all the access. Basically, you're basically the admin of the Azure Maps resource. So that's why you don't want to do that in production. When you use managed identities, the benefit is that you don't need to manage the identity anymore. It will actually not expire because we take care of that for you in the backend. So setting this up maybe looks a little bit complex, but actually we have written a blog post with all the steps how to set this up. So if you go to blogs.azuremaps.com, there you find actually a blog about authentication for Azure Maps, and all the steps to create this architecture is also available there. So here you see all the links, what I already talked about. If you have additional questions, please let them back in the comments. We try to answer them. And of course, try the samples out, because that's, I think, the easy way to get started. So thank you very much for listening, and hopefully we get started with Azure Maps really easy.
Thank you for tuning into this webinar. I hope you found it useful and feel enabled now to start using Azure Maps. No one knows mapping like grey matter, and we have an entire team to help you with your mapping needs. I've put our contact information on the screen, and feel free to contact us via email or give us a call. Bye.